All right, Krystal, what's on your radar?
Total impunity. The Israeli government already knew that they could casually slaughter Palestinian children and innocent civilians while offering half-hearted cover stories about human shields and Hamas militants without the U.S. or American state media lifting a word in protest. They knew that the U.S. government, their weapons dealer and international enabler, would not care about the 10-month-old baby who was the sole survivor when the other 10 members of his family were killed. That happened at a refugee camp. That they wouldn't care about this neurologist, one of the only ones in all of Gaza who was killed along with 33 members of his extended family. That included 8 children. They wouldn't care about this traumatized little girl who's just 10 years old and already at a loss for how to cope with the routine tragedy that upends her life.
I'm always sick. I don't know. I can't do anything. You see all of this. What do you expect me to do? Fix it? I'm only 10. I can't even do anything this morning. I just want to be a doctor or anything to help my people, but I can't. I'm just a kid. I don't even know what to do. I get scared, but not really that much. I do anything for my people, but I don't know what to do. I'm just 10. I'm just 10. All of this, when I see it, I literally cry every day, saying to myself, why do we deserve this? What did we do to this? My family said they just hate us. They just don't like us because we are Muslims. Why does Muslims act for you like that? We're just kids. You see all of the kids around me? They're just kids. Why wouldn't you just send a missile to them and kill them? It's not fair. It's not fair.
But now Bibi and the Israeli army know they can also blatantly lie to the U.S. press, using them as pawns in their military operations and face zero repercussions. They know they can literally demolish the AP's bureau in Gaza and hear nothing but the weakest of protests in the most mealy-mouthed language from anyone with real power in the United States. Early Friday morning, you likely received a notification on your phone that Israel had launched a ground invasion of Gaza. According to the New York Times, that was the message that went out to journalists from the Israeli Defense Forces by text message in on-the-record confirmations from an IDF spokesperson, and it was even tweeted out by the IDF's official Twitter account in a message that remained up at the time of this writing, at least. But it turned out that was all a complete ruse. According to a celebratory Hebrew language press, the IDF had tricked journalists into reporting this invasion in order to lure Hamas militants into more vulnerable positions so that the Israeli attacks would be more deadly. According to the New York Times, Israel's Channel 12 news station ran a segment titled, "This is how the tunnels became death traps for terrorists in Gaza," which described the lies to foreign journalists as a planned ploy. Another Hebrew language news channel claimed that an entire new unit had been created to execute exactly these kinds of deceptions, called appropriately the General Staff Deception Unit. So just to make this clear, the IDF intentionally used the American press as accessories in their military campaign in order to increase the body count from their strikes. Have we heard a word about any of this from a Biden administration that pretends to care about press freedoms? Nope. But this figurative attack on the press was followed up, of course, with a literal attack on the press over the weekend. An Israeli airstrike on Saturday destroyed a high-rise building that housed the AP office in the Gaza Strip, despite repeated urgent calls from the news agency to the military to halt the impending attack. AP called the strike shocking and horrifying. 12 AP staffers and freelancers were working and resting in the bureau on Saturday afternoon with the Israeli military telephoned a warning, giving occupants of the building 1 hour to evacuate. Everyone was able to get out, grabbing a few belongings before 3 heavy missiles struck the 12-story building, collapsing it into a giant cloud of dust. What I just read there was the AP's own reporting on the bombing of their own bureau in Gaza. Al Jazeera and other media outlets were housed in that same building. The IDF claimed that Hamas had offices there, and a leaked report in the Jerusalem Post claimed smoking gun evidence had been provided to the U.S. government for that claim. But U.S. Secretary of State Tony Blinken already has said he has not seen that evidence, and of course, none has been provided publicly. Journalists who work there or who have worked there in the past, like NBC's Richard Engel, say they had zero indication that Hamas was active at all in that building. One thing we know for sure is that the world will have less information about what is going on in Gaza today than they did just days ago. And we also know that that state of affairs suits the Israeli government just fine. And still, not a soul in the Biden administration has been able to bring themselves to condemn the leveling of the AP bureau, mustering only vague, generalized words of support for the press and the same repeated lines about Israel's right to self-defense. It's pathetic. The Biden administration's commitment to a free press is as meaningless and fake as their empty calls for a two-state solution. No one seriously believes such a thing is remotely possible at this point. I saw a lot of comments over the weekend, people saying, well, you shouldn't oversimplify the situation. The history is complex, the dynamics on the ground thorny, the issues involved Byzantine. That is both true and not. Of course, there is a long and complicated history here. But as Michael Brooks once explained, the only thing you really need to know to take a moral stand is that Israel is an apartheid state. They enforce Jim Crow-type laws against their Arab citizens, which force them out of their own homes and render them second-class citizens in everyday life. In the West Bank, Palestinians have no political rights and are subject to extraordinarily strict controls on their movement. Gaza is an open-air prison with occasional campaigns to mow the grass, in their terminology, the horrifying language of a slow-motion ethnic cleansing. Do not allow the complications in these three different regimes of oppression to confuse you, though. The bottom line is, if you are Arab in Israel-Palestine, you are considered officially, by the state, to be inferior, a principle, by the way, that was recently officially codified with the force of constitutional principle. This current campaign and its particular cruelty should be viewed as part of the longer-term project in Israel of unquestioned Jewish supremacy in the entire region from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean. But it should also be seen as part of a test for the Biden administration. After all, Netanyahu famously jumped into the fray of partisan politics during the Obama years and actively campaigned against his re-election. Did Israel's rightward lurch and decision to play in our own tribal politics shift Biden's multi-decade lockstep unquestioning support for anything and everything the Israeli government wants to do? From this shameful episode, the answer could not possibly have come through to Bibi, the world, and the Palestinian people any more clearly. The U.S. government stands with Israel, cheers and supports their right to act with total impunity, and we will give them the military firepower to do it. And Sagar, the fact that the blatant lies to the press, I haven't even heard anyone talk to about that.
Yeah,
Blatantly lied in text messages, sent out the tweet, we all got alerts on our phone, use them as military accessories. I haven't heard anyone say a word about that. And then the AP Bureau is leveled, and there's no proof that's provided that there was actual Hamas activity there, and all you hear is generalized, we support the free press, which is obviously completely meaningless, not only when you have nothing directly to say, you can't even condemn the leveling of the AP Bureau, and then, let's talk about Julian Assange and other failures in terms of upholding the free press. It's all meaningless. The words are different from Trump, yes. The substance, not so much.
The media angle is crazy. And you know that if the U.S. military did that to them, they would freak out. And that's actually has done to them before and did freak out. I remember that in terms of my days of covering the Pentagon. And it's also, there's been this strange right-wing meme that I continue to see, which is like, why is the AP in Gaza in the first place? I'm like, have you heard of journalism?
Right.
I mean, like,
you have to report from all over the world.
The Taliban used to control Afghanistan. I think we were probably all better off by the limited amount of journalists who were in Afghanistan at the time who could tell us what was happening. So that was something that's really been pissing me off about all of this. And you're right. I think that the media angle on this is crazy in terms of just the way that it has been handled in terms of how they have to level their criticism in particular. But yeah, the leveling and flattening of an AP building was outrageous. And it does go to show you, I'm not just saying it because it is the AP, but it is because you can actually see within that how the Israeli government, I mean, they knew that they were going to get pushback from it, but they didn't really
They don't care.
And I keep thinking this, which is something that we continue to discuss on the show, which is that they really do not understand, or maybe they do, but they don't seem to see that the political ground in America is shifting, really. I think especially amongst people who are younger and among the progressive left. And like I said, I do not think that the U.S. government policy towards Israel will be the same in 15 years, even within the bipartisan consensus, just simply because of the explicit alignment with an American political party. And that explicit alignment opens yourself up to a center-left attack, even Chuck Schumer right now, under the barrel for a lot of his support around Israel. Even within the U.S. Senate, I think, bipartisan calls for a ceasefire and more. These are not things which would have existed 10 years ago.
An immediate ceasefire, which is way beyond what Biden, carefully worded in the readout of his call with Bibi. You got John Ossoff.
Exactly.
Who is, as centrist and milquetoast as they come, leading the calls for an immediate ceasefire. That definitely shows you that the political ground...
I think he's a Jewish American as well. I'm fairly certain. So again, this shows you that the political ground is shifting. And the more that they continue with the AP and the real alignment with the GOP in America, how's that political prospects of that party looking right now? I do think it's a huge failure. Like, if you're the Israeli government to consider how our domestic population is shifting, you should look at Europe, because Europe is very much turning against them and has been for a long time. I think things are headed in that direction.
The U.S. government turning against them is the only realistic threat that they face. I mean, that's really the truth. And look, they've obviously, I do see this as like a test for the Biden administration, and explicitly so from Bibi, of like, what can we get away with? What's actually going to lead to any backlash? And you got his answer, nothing, right? Like nothing. You can literally level the AP Bureau, likely offer zero evidence that Hamas was operating inside, and get nothing but like the vaguest of words of support.
And Tony Blinken is the one who said that he hadn't seen any.
He said directly, and Jen Psaki got asked this question in the press briefing yesterday. She danced around the answer, wouldn't say one way or another. So look, if you got proof, bring the proof. I think it still would be a big open question whether it would justify, leveling the entire bureau. And I also think it's very telling. Many of you probably saw this video of the owner of that building begging for 10 more minutes for journalists to go in and get their equipment. Absolutely not. You can't go in and get the equipment. So look, it benefits Israelis to not have those journalists on the ground in Gaza, not have the reporting come out of Gaza right now. And so I don't think that piece of this should be ignored either.
That's right.
Next on Rising, Rachel Bovard and Roger Fisk are coming up for Team Rising. That is next.